Back to rational expressions, and in this case we're going to add and subtract the rational expressions when we have unlike denominators, where the ones that we looked at previously had either common denominators or we were just trying to figure out what the least common denominator was. So now we're looking at it excuse me, in the sense that you have two completely different denominators, and we've got to figure out what the LCD is and then go ahead and write equivalent fractions so that we can add or subtract. So in this case, if I look at it, I'm not going to go through and necessarily write down the different parts of, hey, you know what, this is what this one possesses, this is what this one possesses. But we can kind of see here that this is an m plus 3, this is an m plus 4. They have nothing at all in common for our denominators. So therefore, when we look at this, then I know that this denominator has to be introduced to this fraction, and this denominator has to be introduced to this fraction. Because my common denominator is going to be the whole of m plus 3 and m plus 4. So what happens is then to get this common denominator, m plus 4 has to be introduced here and here. So we end up with 4 times m plus 4. Then the plus sign in between. 3 was already there. And to get this denominator here, we need to introduce the m plus 3 to both numerator and denominator. So then I get m plus 3. So now we go through and we distribute. So I'm going to end up with 4m plus 16 plus 3m plus 9, all of which is divided by the m plus 3, m plus 4. Then we go through and we simplify. Here I get in my numerator 7m plus 25, and then divide by m plus 3, m plus 4. There's no common factor to take out of this numerator. So 7 does not divide both into 7 and 25. So this is actually done. I can't simplify this any further. So that is my simplified fraction for adding 4 divided by m plus 3 plus 3 divided by m plus 4. Again, what we did is we figured out that my least common denominator was going to be m plus 3 and m plus 4 because they were relatively prime to each other. They didn't have anything in common. So therefore, I just created that denominator and knew that we have to introduce the factor that's missing as my denominator here. And the one that would be missing is the m plus 4 for this first fraction. So I introduce m plus 4 in the numerator, m plus 4 in the denominator. Introduce here m plus 3 in the numerator, m plus 4 in the denominator. All right, next example. So here we've got two different ones, and we're going to have to go through and factor this first so that we can see what exactly is missing here. So for my first one, we'll just write it underneath here. So the first one here, the x squared minus 4x minus 5. So that would be x and x. The signs are opposite, plus, minus. Factors of 5 that differ by 4, and the larger one has to be negative. So a 5 goes there and a 1 here. On this one, when we break this apart, we have an x, we have an x. This tells me the factors are the same. They're both negative. So now I need factors of 5 that add to give me 6, so that's 5 and 1. So my least common denominator, we have the x plus 1 here, the x minus 5 here. Sorry, that's x plus 1. It's just hard to see. And then if I look over here, I already have the x minus 5, so I don't need to write that again, but I'm missing an x minus 1, and that's what needs to be introduced. So my new denominator here, my LCD, x plus 1, x minus 5, x minus 1. So on this one, this first one here, I've got the 4. And then the factor that was missing is the x minus 1. So that's the one that I need to introduce. Minus 2 times. The factor that's missing from here that is in my LCD is the x plus 1. So now let's go through and clean that up. So my numerator is 4x minus 4 minus 2x minus 2, all divided by all of that, the x plus 1. The x minus 5, and the x minus 1. Now we go through, we simplify all this, and I'm going to end up with 2x minus 6 in the numerator. Again, x plus 1, x minus 5, and x minus 1. I can take out a 2 here. If I take out a 2, I'm just going to end up with, and I'll write it down here anyway, but I'm going to end up with just 2 times x minus 3, and then I have the whole denominator, x plus 1, x minus 5, x minus 1. There's still no common factor that I can simplify, so this actually is done. There's nothing else I can do with this. And that is my simplified version. All right, let's take a look at one more example here. And in this example, we've got, if I look here, I've got the x plus 2, the w plus 2, w plus 7. So if I look at my least common denominator, I've got w plus 2 and I've got w plus 7. And if I factor this, I need factors of 14 that will add to give me 9. Well, wait a minute, if I look at this, if I multiply these two things out, well, that's exactly what I have. So that means if this is factored here, this is w plus 2 and w plus 7. So my common denominator is going to be exactly what that is. So that means I don't have to do anything with this numerator. I don't have to introduce anything, nothing. But here, I've got to introduce the w plus 7 to numerator and denominator. I have to introduce the w plus 2 to the numerator and denominator. Okay? So then, as we go through, my least common denominator, again, is just going to be the w plus 2, w plus 7. I already had a 3w here that's going to now have to be multiplied by w plus 7. Plus, I had a 2 there, and then to get common denominators, I'm going to introduce a w plus 2 minus the stuff I already had there because there's no change. All right, so now let's go through and multiply all this out. Okay, I'm going to have my numerator is 3w squared plus 21w, distribute the 2, plus 2w plus 4, and then actually I made a small error here. All right, so hopefully you caught that as I was doing that, but that should be minus. Okay, so now because that negative has to be distributed to both, right? So since that negative has to be distributed to both, this needs to be minus. So now I've got minus 17w minus 4. All of that is divided by w plus 2, w plus 7. All right, so now there's only a w squared, so that's 3w squared. I've got 21w plus 2w, which is 23w. 23w, then I'm going to go through and subtract 17w from that, which gives me plus 6w. Positive 4 and negative 4, those are going to add out, so I don't have to deal with that at all. So now I still have w plus 2 times w plus 7. That's a 7. All right, so now I can factor here. I can factor out a 3 out of both of those, and I can factor out a w. So now I get 3w times w plus 2. So this is good because it looks like something's going bye-byes. So now I rewrite my denominator. And just like we did in other cases, I can now simplify those w plus 2's. All right, and I'm running out of room here, so I'm actually going to put my equal sign here. I'm left with a 3w in the numerator and a w plus 7 in the denominator. All right, so again, just to recap, right? When I factored this was already, I had 2 of the factors here. Then when I factored this, it came out to exactly what was needed for the least common denominator. So again, we introduced the factors we need. So here I would have had to introduce a w plus 7. So it's already introduced in the denominator, introduced now in the numerator. Here we'd have to introduce a w plus 2. There's the w plus 2. Here I just had to distribute the negative. Now I made that small error, but thankfully we caught it quickly. All right, everybody makes errors. You got to learn off of the errors. That's actually one of the reasons I don't edit these, It's because when we make an error, we learn from that and fix it. All right, so then you go through and do the same process that we have all throughout. We factor that numerator, see what we can simplify out, because this is the equivalent of 1, and I'm left with just the 3w divided by w plus 7. All right, so again, hopefully this was helpful, useful, and all the like. If it was, please go ahead and subscribe to the Charahoe Pre-Calculus page, and there's plenty more videos there to assist you. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.